Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be. Thank you all for joining me. Today is episode 172 of Ascension with A Course in Miracles. And what that means is that for quite a while now, quite many years, I have been inspired to offer these transmissions. And basically, what happens is I just let the divine speak through me. And it is always done in a way that it is to make more clear the teachings of A Course in Miracles that I have been blessed to be a student of. And for whatever reason, I guess I chose it before I incarnated. I am also a teacher of these principles. I am what is known in A Course in Miracles as a teacher of God. So welcome, everybody. And oh my gosh, I'm just so happy to see some familiar faces that I haven't seen in a long time. Brother Mike, thank you for being here. Yay, so exciting. What a joy to see you here. And of course, everybody else, Crystal haven't seen you in a little bit, but I know you've been traveling. So good to see you. And of course, our sweet regular, Stacy, Jody. Oh, so good to have you all here. All right. Other people will pop in and we'll let them in as they arrive. But for now, oh, here they come. But for now, let me share a little bit about why I posted that this particular conversation had to do with really what A Course in Miracles has to say about politics. And when I get these inspirations of what to share, I'm always surprised that I still have some reactions. I was arguing. I was like, why do I have to talk about politics in A Course in Miracles? Can I just stick to the sweet stuff of A Course in Miracles? And basically, I was told no, in a very sweet, loving way. And I was told no, because I am very well qualified to put the two together. And I have been taken through a journey of seeing what politics has done to humanity, because humanity has allowed itself to be controlled by the ego. A Course in Miracles is very simple, very, very simple. And last night, as I was preparing for this class, which those of you who are regular, I don't prepare. I just come and I allow a transmission to happen through me. That's what pretty much just about all the other past episodes. This one's 172, I think, is this one, which means that all of the other ones, 171, have been all about just allowing what wants to flow. But in this particular episode, I was told that we have to have a conversation. Humanity is hurting, and humanity basically is ready to understand why we're hurting. And those who are ready to use the pain, which those who have been students in my classes know that I say every irritation is an invitation. When we are at a level of spiritual maturity, that we have come to the place of understanding that we are the creators of our reality. We understand the laws of cause and effect, of giving and receiving are one. We know that if I'm having a reaction to whatever's happening, it's because it's in me. If I have healed it in me, then I can observe it in another with compassion. That spiritual maturity is the process of going on a journey that takes lifetimes. However, in this lifetime, many of us agreed to come in and wake up so that we could, like Jesus, be examples of the way to heal. And the way to heal is you got to go within. You've got to see what's going on. And to see what's going on, you got to get honest. You got to get vulnerable. You've got to be willing to desire healing more than you want to be right. And right now, we're observing in the world this incredible egoic reaction to people not getting their way because they want to be right. Because we have been conditioned to believe that when we don't get our way, we did something wrong. Sorry about that. I forgot to turn off my phone. We did something wrong, and nobody's done anything wrong. There's absolutely nothing that anyone has done that is wrong. We don't have the wrong candidates. We don't have the wrong elected one. We don't have the wrong past one. We don't have the wrong next one. there is absolutely nothing wrong in creation, because creation is simply the manifestations of everything that is possible for all of us. So let me share the 10 basic understandings. I don't want to call them principles, even though that word keeps getting pushed through me, but I know that that's more ego. These are the 10 basic understandings that if we get these 10 things, then we really truly have a good awareness of what's happening. These 10 basic understandings come right out of the Course in Miracles. And even though some are lessons, some are even titles of lessons, some are repeated over and over and over again, there is nowhere in the Course that says, if you know these 10 things, then you're spiritually mature, because it requires that we study the whole Course. For me, it's been many, many years, and I will not stop studying the Course, because every single year, and I'm going on 12 years now, I think there was only 1 year I didn't study the Course because I was leading another group through the Way of Mastery, also written by Jesus, channeled by Jesus, and given to us as a follow-up to A Course in Miracles. But even when I led a group through A Course of Love, which is also channeled by Jesus, again, another follow-up to A Course in Miracles, I still did my lessons daily, because it's good for me. And then, of course, I do these Ascension with A Course in Miracles, and every single Wednesday that I do one of these transmissions, it is always note to self, because it's for me as much as it is for those who want to receive this information. So let's look at this list. So I wrote it down, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it clearly, but what I'll do is, if anybody wants me to send them a copy of this, I will be more than happy to take a photo afterwards and share it with you. But that wasn't part of the preparation. So let's look at number one. Number one says God is. When you study the Course, it becomes really clear that there is only God. And that is necessary to understand that all is God if you're going to free your mind from the ego. Because when everything is God, then all of the lessons make perfect sense. But if you don't get that God is all that there is, it is what is. There is nothing else that exists except God. Now, we have been conditioned to believe that God is a human being, some angry father on a cloud somewhere, because, and you'll see, we'll discuss that a little bit later, we don't know what God is because we've been taught about God by people who had opinions about God, created perceptions about God. And perceptions were about who God is, what God is, were created through projection. Angry people projected an angry God in the sky. Punishing people created a punishing God. And we have bought into that because our immature minds haven't questioned what we've been taught. However, it's very clear when you start moving down this path and you take these lessons and you allow these lessons to work through you, you understand that everything is God. The second item on there is that we have an authority problem. The Course is very clear. If we all knew that God is, we would be operating under that authority. But because we don't know what God is, we're operating under our own authority. And this is what is so important to understand. And this was the thing that when I questioned God, why do I teach the least sexy thing about spirituality? Why can I teach about love and light and unicorns and meditations and all the beautiful things about sitting inside of my alignment with the source of all that is? Why can't I teach that? And I was told, no, you're going to teach about the ego because you need to master that in yourself. If you're going to move forward in your own journey, you've got to understand the ego, because on this planet, we don't have too many teachers of the ego, because not too many teachers of truth, spirituality, have truly transcended their own ego. And I have not transcended fully my ego, but it is my job in this lifetime to do that. And I am in the process of doing everything that I'm guided to do so that I can end the trance that I've been in because I've been listening to the ego as my authority. So that's what I was called to do. And believe me, it is not an easy thing to teach because I'm teaching egos. If people knew what the ego was, they wouldn't have to come to me to learn about their ego. They'd be living in alignment to God within. But because I teach about the ego to people who are coming to me in their ego, it's a very repetitive process. And some people who've been studying this same information for years, I keep repeating the same thing over and over and over again, which is very simple. You create your reality because God is what you are accessing, because there's only one mind, there's only one power, and you are the point of expression for that power. And when we continue to look at what's happening out there that I don't like, we want to say, well, somebody else did it, because we have an authority problem. We keep saying they did it. They did this to me, because we don't want to take responsibility for the fact that I did this to myself because I'm deciding to block God's truth from my awareness. Now, granted, we enter into this incarnation from a place of knowing that we are going to block God. It's a game. It's a game of hide and seek. I'm going to hide from the truth, and then I'm going to spend lifetime seeking the truth. Why? Because it's fun. It's fun. When we were little kids, it was fun to hide, to stand behind the tree for hours sometimes, and nobody would find you. And you're sitting there going, I'm over here, I'm over here. You poke your head out and you try to get people to see you because it's fun. It's fun playing. When we understand that this is all a game, it's a game of hide and seek. We're hiding the truth so that we can spend a lifetime seeking it. Because as God, as source, as the essence that knows all that is, what is all knowing going to do for us? If we have all knowing, we literally just sit in that awareness and that's it. There's nothing to create. There's nothing to experience. There's nothing to focalize our attention in. We're just being all that is. But God, being all that is, decided, no, I want to play. I want to play. So I am going to express myself as grains of sand, as blades of grass. I'm going to express myself as clouds, as water, as mountains, as planets, as alien beings, all kinds of creatures. I'm going to express myself in all the ways that infinity can be experienced, which means there's no end to it. So one of the things that God decided to do is I want to experience what it's like to know me. And it begins the process because this all happens in the mind. And that's something that we have to understand. The Course in Miracles teaches us that God is intelligence. It is mind. It's not brain. It's not head. It's mind. It's that infinite intelligence that is constantly expressing because there is no limit to what it can do. And why does it do it? Because it's fun. It wants to experience itself, but to experience itself, it must have another to experience itself. Can you imagine if you were the only one here? What would you do? Yeah, you could roam around the world and you could roam around the place and have nothing that would obstruct you, no animals. You don't create anything, because if you're God and that's the only thing that there is, well, you wouldn't even need a planet. You would just be consciousness. But in this game, part of the game, and we must understand this, part of the game is to begin to recognize that when we have that experience of otherness to experience what God is, we create the authority problem, because now this other thinks that it is God, which it is, but in egoic from the egoic perspective, it thinks it's God and it can block God. And that's where all the troubles begin, because number 3 says that when we begin to become our own authority, we have 2 thought systems. There's the thought system of God. God is all that is, and it is love. It is love because it's one with everything. It's created everything and loves unconditionally all that it has created. It is light, because that's the only substance that exists. Is light, is the energy, it's the substance, it's the consciousness, it's the love, it's the mind. Once we really truly understand what God is, it's inseparable from recognizing that it is love and it is light. That is what God is. But then there's the, well, if I am God and you're not God, as we talk to God, you're not God, I have to be God. Then the ego creates the experience of separation. I'm separate from God, as opposed to I'm an expression of God, aspect of God, a projection of God, so God can know itself. Because how is God going to know it is love if it doesn't have something to feel love for it, to connect with it, to experience it? Again, it would be very, very, I'm not going to say lonely, because when you're one with all that is, you know, all is there. So there's no opportunity for loneliness, but there's no opportunity for experience. So ego is the opportunity for us to experience what it's like to be other than God, to know ourselves better, to understand where we come from, to understand what we are. But what has happened to humanity is that under the beliefs of separation, for thousands upon thousands of years, and I'm going to only focus on this planet. This is a much broader topic, but I'm going to focus on this planet because I'm bringing it down to the elections on planet Earth. We're not talking about the president of the cosmos or anything like that. Planet Earth elections, because this is the game that we're playing right here. So ego, believing in separation, has to do the opposite of what love is. It has to block love. And when we don't feel love, then automatically we experience fear. Just as there's only light in the cosmos, there's no source of darkness, there's only a source of light. You look at the sun at nighttime, what has happened? The sun didn't go away. We just turned our back on the sun. The planet turns and we block the sun. The sun's right there, but we see darkness because we're casting a shadow over everything. The sun is behind us. We're in the dark. We're in the shadow. So when you understand that the ego is a block to God, it's a block to love. So what do you see? You see fear. You experience fear. It blocks light. What do you experience? Darkness. So when you understand that, and then you understand the thoughts that come from those two thought systems, and I've created a chart. You guys are all familiar with my charts that come regularly. When you understand that we are the creators of our reality, then you understand that the ego's world that we're experiencing is the result of a thought system that believes in fear, that believes in darkness, that believes in suffering. Because we are blocking ourselves from that which is all joy, then we are experiencing the opposite of it. So we have the world that the ego has made, which is where we experience a lot of darkness, but there's still God in there. Why? Because God is. Can't take God out of you. You can think that you pulled yourself away from God, but you cannot take God out of you because you're made of God. Everything about us is infused with God. So our journey of understanding what's happening, as the Course says, is a process of retraining our minds to think like God. Before we can think like God, we go through a process of learning to think what God thinks, to learn what God thinks, and then we begin to think with God, which is what the Holy Spirit is for us. It's a voice that we can hear, and it is a voice that speaks for God until we are ready to return to align as God. But for that, you'll see it takes a few more steps. So the world that God created, God creates this beautiful planet for us. Well, we can't fully experience this planet as God intended in a loving way because we, as our own authority, have decided to do it our way. And that's it. And when the ego decides we're going to do it my way, it makes it very clear it's my way or the highway. And anything that stands in the way of the ego, well, the ego is going to get rid of. That's just the way it happens to maintain its own story of separation, limitation, fear, darkness, lies. The Course calls it insanity. Then when we understand that we have to break things into two thought systems, because that's when things become a lot easier if you keep things simple into two thought systems and no more. Because, well, after all, that's all there is. Then you've got to understand, accept that the Course teaches us what cause and effect is, that giving and receiving are one, because you are the cause of everything. You are made in the image of God as God to create. So you are the cause of everything that you experience. And what you give to others in terms of you give jealousy, anger, hate, you're going to feel that. You're going to experience that. That becomes your reality, because that becomes the world that that the ego makes for you. It projects out there everything that can be egoic. Why? Because it's fun, because you're hiding, because you're experiencing, because you're playing a game. But ego has made it very serious that this is not the game, even though it is what created the game. It is the opportunity for the game, but it doesn't want to believe that this is a game, because if this is a game, then all of the suffering would be over like that. But we didn't come here to have it be over and be God again, one with all that is, because we wanted to have the game of separation. But when you understand that there is another way to play the game, that is what changes everything. That, and again, you'll see that in a second. So when we understand and have to take responsibility, become the authority of our own experience, become one who decides, you know what, I'm going to train my mind. It makes perfect sense. If there are opposites here in this world, if there's good and bad, if there's lies and truths, if there's being kind and being selfish, if this world has opposites, then let me study, where do those opposites come from? That was part of my journey. I wanted to see why, if there are two to everything, why can't I just pick the one? Why do I have to experience lying and cheating and hunger and jealousy? Why do I have to experience that when there is an opposite that I could experience as well? Well, the reason we can't experience choosing alignment with one source is because we don't understand our ego mind. We don't understand our mind. I had no idea what consciousness was, what awareness was, what aligning with God was. I had no idea that there was another, a way of looking at God that wasn't a religious way. I had to go on a journey. And to go on this journey, I needed to begin to shift my perceptions. I had to have the maturity, and the Course calls it a willingness to see things in a different way, which meant maturity means you override your own righteousness. You decide, you know what, I can't be right. If I want to experience things just this way, but I keep experiencing this way, I can't be right about what I believe, because it always gives me this. And we know, Einstein told us that insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. That is what egoic righteousness has done to us. We keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result. When you look at the current elections, and when you see the people who are very upset that the current administration didn't win again, they truly are believing that this administration, people who've been in power for many, many years, when you look at Biden, he's been in office, I can't remember exactly, but over 4 decades. They believe that they'll do it differently next time and we'll get a different result, but it's the same people. So when you understand that you have to overwrite your own need to be right, that when you're suffering, you've got to decide, you have to decide, you know what, I really don't want to suffer. Let me open myself up to another way of experiencing this. It's very difficult, and it takes an incredible amount of courage to overwrite your righteousness, because to overwrite your righteousness is the beginning of the process of humility that is necessary, and you're going to see why. But until you are committed to being humble enough to say, maybe I don't know it all. Maybe I don't know all that there is, because you don't. Every single one of us is one aspect of God. God being all that is, all knowing, you have access to a tiny little amount of that, and it is always going to be tainted by your own personal life experiences. And when you are defending that that is the truth, then you don't have an opening. You don't give yourself an out for something else. This is why most people enter the spiritual journey through a tragic experience. It typically requires something to shatter your reality, to cause you to go down to your knees. For me, it was the death of my mother. To finally say, God, whatever is out there, even if you don't call it God, there's got to be another way. This way is painful. This way is I'm done with it. So you have to make that decision, because until that point, ego runs your life, and you think you are your thoughts. You think you are, you are your ego in that process. But when you decide there's got to be another way, you are utilizing the free will that you have to say, okay, I now want to listen to the other thought system. I've been listening to this one, and I keep doing all kinds of different things, but it keeps giving me the same result. I am going to be humble enough to become a student, to become like a little child and begin to question things. Then you begin to experience miracles, because miracles are shifts in perception. You're shifting from the ego way of looking at things to God's way of looking at things. Once you do that, you recognize that not once you do that, once you do that and practice the teachings over and over and over again, for some of us, it takes decades to recognize what's happening here. We're all playing the game. Everybody has free will. Everybody's playing, listening to the ego or listening to God. And we're all in various stages of that process. And in various stages of that process, you're aware of more and more and more as you go. So at some point, you realize that forgiveness, according to the way that the Course in Miracles teaches is very different than the ego. Ego says, I'm going to forgive it, but I'm not going to forget it. Meaning you did something to me and I'm going to forgive you. I don't want to talk to you anymore, but I'm not going to forget what you did to me. Because, let's see, got some more folks joining us. Here we go. I'm not going to forget what you did to me because I'm holding a grudge and I'm making you responsible for what I lost. You killed my family, you gave me a sickness, you did something to me, you stole my money, you fired me, whatever the story is, you are responsible. Why? Because we have an authority problem. We've been conditioned to believe that others have power over us. That is part of the insanity of the ego. It makes its own authority over God, and then it gives authority to everything else over itself. Isn't that crazy? That's why it's insane. That's why it takes a while to see all of this, because it's so much and it's layered and layered and layered and convoluted. And it's like unraveling a ball of yarn that is not a string. It's tons of little strings tied together, and you got to unknot them. And then you spend time looking at that thing, and then you pull and there's another string. It's so convoluted because as Dolores Cannon wrote, we live in a convoluted universe created by the ego so that it would make the game so dense and incredible, exciting, that it would be very difficult to get out of that game unless you chose to deliberately recognize that you are the creator of the game. That's why the Course in Miracles tells us that forgiveness recognizes what never happened, meaning for true forgiveness recognizes we're all God, experiencing that we're not. Who is there to blame? We're all pure consciousness. So then you've got to understand that we're all just energy. So what, did something happen? Did something really happen? No, it didn't, because the Course teaches us that we're not bodies. You're not a body. You're still free as God created you, meaning forgiveness comes from recognizing all of this is just energy playing out, expressing itself in all kinds of different ways for the purpose of the game of hide and seek. And when you truly understand what forgiveness is all about, there is nobody to blame. Now you have elevated yourself, and this is, I use the chart of emotions, the map of consciousness, which was given to us by our holy brother, Dr. David Hawkins, he came to teach about kinesiology. I teach about the ego. He taught about kinesiology. Dolores Cannon taught about being able to access the conscious mind, the higher self. I mean, every single one of us has a little piece of the puzzle that when you can begin to bring them together, it paints a bigger picture. So when you understand that every single one of us operates at different levels of consciousness, then you recognize somebody who does something with ego, you can forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Jesus came to teach us what real forgiveness is. He forgave those who were hammering him because they thought they were killing him. But how can he be killed if he's not a body and he is free and he's as God created him? And if they killed him, if they really got rid of him, could he still be channeling 2,000 years later the book, A Course in Miracles? It wouldn't be possible. So you have to move beyond what the mind has been trained to believe and begin to see that we have all fallen into the delusion. The movie The Matrix gives us a wonderful, wonderful explanation of what has happened. We fall asleep and, we incarnate and we have an experience of being separate. And then inside of this world, those who have forgotten who they are, but still remember that the essence of innocence, which is what forgiveness is. I recognize the innocence in everyone. The essence of innocence, which every child brings, becomes the most prized possession, the most prized commodity. And that's why children, their knowledge is sucked out of them from an early age. Their creativity, their connection to source, their ability to live in the moment, their joy is totally sucked out of them, and sometimes literally. And when you understand that every single one of us has that direct connection to God, then you're tapping into something that we must make manifest in this world. We must bring it back into the world, which is what being born again is all about. Instead of being born into the matrix and giving our power away, we have to come tap into our power and let that power be resurrected through us. It's born again in us, and then we become the embodiment of that truth, which Jesus did for us. And he lived his last 3 years after he had his experience in the River Jordan, and he was baptized, and all of a sudden, whoosh, he remembered truth. Every one of us that has an awakening, that has a near-death experience, or in my case, I had a near-life experience, and you feel the truth of who you are, and you are given a glimpse of that, you're altered because now you know truth at a visceral, felt level, and then you've got to train your mind, which is to undo all the learning that you learned and begin to remember the truth of who you are and live by that. So forgiveness allows us to recognize everybody's in the same boat. Everybody forgot who they are. We're not going to judge the people who are doing things that could be considered evil, because we're all playing a game, and that evil expression is as necessary as the light is. How is the light going to experience forgiveness if it doesn't have someone to forgive? They are symbiotic relationships that are formed for the purpose of the light and the dark dancing with each other and having an experience that ultimately allows all beings to remember the magnificence of the light of who we are, the love that we are capable of expressing. But you don't know to appreciate love if you haven't lost it. You don't know to appreciate liberty if you haven't lost it. You don't know to appreciate creativity if you haven't withheld it. So everybody is playing a role that is necessary. And one of the things that is so important for us to understand is the way that the ego works. And the ego works through a process of forgetting and then creating barriers and blocks so that it appears that its truth is very solid because it is blocking anything else that could help it come out of its delusion. But the ego does what it does through the process of righteousness. And we are conditioned to understand right and wrong from a very early age. And it is ingrained in us through the process of rewards and punishments. Because if you don't get it right, then you're going to get punished. And then we learned we don't want to be wrong, which is why it's so difficult for a mature adult, or I won't call it mature. As people are watching the elections, they are needing to be right, and they're bashing anybody who voted for somebody else. You are the cause of my issues. Well, if they really saw that what is happening in the world out there is the projection of what's in here. There are many people who are experiencing this election results, most people from the egoic perspective, and the ego only has two sides. It's like two sides of the same coin, victim or bully. Those who are gloating about their winnings, those who are so happy and now they're going to go after everybody who did the wrong things, that's ego. And then those who are operating and I'm victimized by what was done, that's ego. Two sides of the same coin expressing itself in this game so that one can see what's missing, so that the victim can find their power, claim their own authority first, and then begin to recognize, well, what do we have to do for all to experience that authority? When the bully is gloating and it's just going to viciously go after the others, well, and we have those on both sides, by the way, because victims are bullies, just as bullies are victims. You cannot separate the two. Anybody who feels victimized by what is happening is also playing the role of a bully, because its anger is being projected on somebody else. And whether they're passive aggressive or aggressive, they're just simply out there saying, I have been hurt by you. I need you to pay. I need somebody else to take responsibility. Again, because they don't understand that they have created this through cause and effect. Everything that's happening in the world is a co-creation of the collective. And we're each individually pulling our power from it through our own individual journeys. So when you understand forgiveness, then your body has been purified of old traumas and resentments, energy that has been blocked. Now you can observe what is happening, and now you can be in service. And you'll see why that's so important, being in service to the greater good. Because after forgiveness comes that true humility that allows us to recognize, because in the Course in Miracles, it says true humility consists in accepting my role in salvation. When we really know who we are and we stop pretending to be the ego and we humble ourselves and we can go, oh my gosh, not my will anymore, not my ego's will anymore, which only leads me to suffering. I want to do God's will, which only leads to happiness and joy. In that humbleness, you deliberately become an instrument for God's peace. You now, because you have seen the work that you had to do on your mind, you had to look at your belief systems, you had to look at the irritations. They became invitations for you to sort out, okay, this is me in my authentic self as God. This is me in my delusional self as the ego. Then you realize any reaction to anything is an opportunity to come inside. So with true humility, you have a reaction when you watch the news, then you know it's not there. Cause and effect says it's here. Let me come to the cause of it. My thinking, my mind believes that something out there happened and it has power over me. Then you, in your process of understanding what the Course is teaching, you forgive yourself for forgetting the truth of who you are. And in that moment, you shift and you lift into that frequency that is the loving frequency, that is the light that is coming into this world to shine more clearly on all that has been kept dark, because egos not only are liars and cheaters and hoarders, but egos keep things secret. And they need to keep things secret, because if they don't keep it a secret, the game of hide and seek ends. So they hide all of the stuff that they've done so nobody sees what they've done, because in that hiding of the suppressing of the truth, the game just continues. And it can continue. And if because when you get to a level that you understand what the ego does, and the ego is all about winning the game because it needs to be right, then you can understand what has happened in this world. So then we come down to, after you have true humility, you recognize point number 8, that there's really one thing that we need to do, and it's salvation. And it's not the salvation of religion. And a lot of people have to go through unwinding their mind from their beliefs about what salvation is. I used to think God was going to save me, then know that Jesus died for my salvation. And then I felt guilty that poor Jesus was hammered because I was a sinner. And that just messes up our minds. But the Course trains us to unwind our mind from all those lies, to sort things out in a very logical way, something the ego cannot do. The ego is illogical. I mean, it's absolutely illogical. It does things that are double standards that are like, once you begin to see them, you go, holy cow. I know it well, because I used to do that a lot. So salvation, there are 2 parts to salvation. The number 1, and this comes in lesson number 70, is that salvation comes from me. You are the only one who can save you. You are the only one who can choose to unwind your mind and train yourself to think with God. You are the only one who can stop your suffering, because you are the cause of the suffering. And you are the only one who can do that, but only when you humble yourself enough and stop thinking you know it all, like I had to do. My God, I was so wrong about everything. It was very little that I was right about, 0.1% of what I knew I was right about, which was the love that I had for my children and my that was the only thing I was right about. Love was so amazing and natural, and it comes effortlessly. But the 99.9% that was egoic lies, that's what I thought was true. I thought I was a body. I thought I was separate. I thought God was out there. I thought the government had power over me. I thought medicine from a doctor cured me. I thought the education system really knew what was better for me. I thought that everything was coming from out there. I had an authority problem. I thought, because I was listening to the ego, so first the ego took authority to make me think that I had no authority. So you see the convolutedness of this? And then everything outside of me had authority. So as I went through my process, I had to lose everything that I thought kept me safe, was true. I had to lose the relationships, the partnerships, the marriages. I had to lose status. I had to lose money. I had to lose stuff. I had to lose friendships. I had to lose all of the things that tied my mind to that story that my ego had created about who I was. And as those things begin to fall apart and be gone, and I realized, oh, I'm still here and I'm still happy. So then who I am and who my happiness didn't come from all those things that I lost, because they're gone. So what is it that is here that's happy that couldn't be happy then? Well, I couldn't be happy then because my mind was trained to look for happiness outside of myself. I could never sit and being happy, me being happy as me, because I was always chasing and getting. Well, that's enough to ruin any relationship. If you're constantly looking for something outside of yourself, you're never there present to be that. So when you begin to recognize that salvation comes from you, you are the one who has to save yourself from the insanity. When you really recognize your role in all of it, then the Course tells us that the world's salvation depends on me. That comes in lesson, what was the number, 186? Then you have to look at, well, how do I save the world? And this is where you really begin to understand how powerful you are, the influence that you have. And when you're influencing the world with the ego, you're out there to gratify yourself, which is what the ego does. It's all about me, service to self. What can I get? What can I accumulate? Why? Because the ego doesn't believe that happiness is already there. It doesn't know that it is already whole and complete. So it goes into positions of power, rises to places where it can assume control. And it is happy to take control. It's happy to be idolized. The Course in Miracles takes us. I spent, I don't know how many of these Ascension with the Course in Miracles we went through in the text, in chapter 30 of the text, breaking down what the idols are, how we have given power to others. Ego decided, I'm not the authority, you're the authority. But then in the convoluted game, People rise into positions of authority, and then they write the rules and the laws, and then they assume that they are authority over everybody else, that through our votes or even not voting, we're complicit following their laws. We do what they tell us to do. So when we don't understand how all of this gets played out, how all of it got made, then you can see why it's so difficult for people to see exactly what is happening, why the characters are where they're at, because it's a game. And if you understand the game, you can see the right and perfect characters are always in the right and perfect place, because there's no such thing as right or wrong in creation. All that is all that is expressing itself, cannot be right or wrong. We just have to learn how to see the game so we can understand the frequency that it's playing at. When it's operating in a frequency of ego, it's going to be very uncomfortable. But when it's operating at a frequency that is higher, that is God's frequency, moving into the realms of courage and acceptance and willingness and neutrality, then all of a sudden things change, and you can see and really truly appreciate every character that is playing in these elections. You can see how all are absolutely perfect and necessary. And this game then becomes a joyful experience because it's not personal. It's not personal at all. It is God expressing itself in all these different ways to give us something to do. Otherwise, we'd be sitting as God in creation, twiddling our thumbs if there's nothing to experience, because creation must be experienced to have a felt knowingness of the deliciousness of what it's like. And that's why we have bodies and senses, so that we can have those experiences. But once you understand salvation, point number 9 is you must then accept that we are under no laws but God's. That then comes in lesson 76. I am under no laws but God's, which, by the way, right before we started this, I was told that we're going to put chapter 31 that we're looking at in the text during the Ascension with A Course in Miracles, because we have to pivot. People need to understand what Jesus wants us to get through this lesson 76. I am under no laws but God's, because if we don't understand God's laws, we're operating under ego laws. And ego laws are the source of our suffering. If you are humble enough to recognize, yep, I've been causing a lot of suffering for myself, I'm ready to follow God's laws, then you're mature enough to take on something like this and look at your beliefs and question them. Do they still make you suffer? Let it go. But if you don't let it go, it's because you don't want to, because you want to be right. And when you want to be right, then your suffering is yours. Why? Because through cause and effect, you're receiving what you're giving your attention to. That's why we can't say anybody is wrong in their suffering. Anybody who is feeling devastated through what's happening is because at a deep level, they want to have that experience. As creators of their reality, that's the frequency they want to experience. Now, we made agreements with each other that those who choose to go to a higher frequency model what salvation is all about, because the salvation of the world depends on me. When I start walking with God, when I start doing, living my life under no laws but God's, you're unplugging from the matrix. You, of course, you're going to be called crazy things. You're crazy, you're weird. These people got burnt at the stake in past lives who may still have those memories. These are the conspiracy theories because they're willing to look behind the veil. They're questioning things. Why? Because curiosity is necessary. To move out of the egoic control, you have to be curious about another way. So once you move into understanding God's laws, guess what happens? And the Course in Miracles lays it out so beautifully. You get to become a happy dream creator. Why? Because your function is to be happy according to God. Lesson 66 teaches us that your function is to be happy. If you're not happy, it's because you don't want to be. Why? Because you're the creator of your reality, because you're causing all of the effects of unhappiness so you can have that experience. So I'm sharing these 10 points because life wants you to know. Life wants you to know that there is a manual, there is a teaching called A Course in Miracles, which, by the way, is just Jesus is just expanding in the Course what he came to teach 2,000 years ago. But look how stubborn we've been. As humans, we have been so stubborn. So when we look at politics, you have to recognize that anybody who rises to a position of power that seeks to control humanity, that seeks to tell others what they can and cannot do, creating laws that are nonsensical, most of them, we call them red tape, that block the ability to express ourselves, that block, which our Constitution, which by the way was an inspired document, inspired by people who were God, expressing themselves, connecting more to God, less to ego, wanted to move humanity away from the controls of the crown on the other side of the ocean, and came here and decided to start a place where all beings could be free. Why? Because they recognized all men and women are endowed by God with the same inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our purpose is to be happy. Liberty is because we have free will. We have free will to suffer if we want to. We have free will to stop it if we want to. And what is life? We have eternal life. If you don't get it done in this lifetime, you have another one. Do you know how many founding fathers, I believe, have incarnated right now? And they're part of the ones who want to move our government back to the original Constitution, which limited what government could do to its people. And not only that, it said that the people were the ones who needed to run the government because it's by the people, for the people, of the people. So we're beginning to wake up, those who are beginning to recognize that there has to be another way. And they're saving themselves. They're clearing their own karma. They're moving through the limitations of the ego, which is a simple process, but it is not easy, are now wanting to serve in positions of government. We are seeing everywhere that those who have succeeded, who know how to create business, who know how to create abundance, now want to be leaders in government because they recognize that this government was created for people to go and serve, create the laws that we all live, that we're supposed to abide in, because they bring their awarenesses, their wisdom, and then they go back into the private sector to live under those laws. Never did our founding fathers intend for career politicians, because when we enter into something in a selfish pursuit for what's in it for me, we see what happens. Because there's very few things that those who are operating at that level of ego want: money and power. And to have money, they must take it from somewhere, because if they're not really producing anything in business, producing products, producing services, they've got to take it from those who are doing those things. And when you understand that every single person playing the game in specific roles, and you see their level of consciousness, you see how we have, through the process of education, through the process of religion, through the fears that we've had about government, or made it our savior and idolized it and said, you're going to keep me safe and make me, you get to decide what I can do to stay safe. We have given our power away. We gave our power away because we have an authority problem. We have said power is outside of me, not in me, because we're listening to the ego, who inside of us thinks it can block God. But here's the beautiful thing. You can't block God, because God is what you're made of. And it is pulsing in you. And whether in this lifetime or another, or maybe 10 more, it is going to wake up. It's going to wake up, because God didn't intend to forever not know itself. It intended to hide and find itself. Through the process of awakening, we're all coming to remember the truth that is true always and will always be, and that is God is. And it is you and me. So now that's complete. I feel like there's nothing else that's going to flow through me. So let's open this up. If you have any comments or questions, please, let's talk about these things. Because I do recognize a lot of people are hurting because they don't understand these simple principles. Love you, doll. Later. You are magnificent. Thank you so much. I appreciate you for being here. All right. Just unmute yourselves if you want to. Did you get something from this? Were there any nuggets? Are you more curious? Hopefully that's what happens, is you're more curious and you want to go to the course. And if not, come back next week.
Hi, Laina, can you hear me?
I'm so happy to see your beautiful face.
And I'm happy to see yours.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to listen to you. I am just fascinated by how you can talk. What's it been? Almost an hour now. Makes sense. Everything is flowing, and it's just a delight to listen to you. I haven't.
It's not me. I can't take credit.
Okay.
I just give my mouth to God. I'm a mouthpiece.
Well, it's beautiful to listen to. And a couple things that really hit home with me was when you were talking about how this is a game and how we're all playing the game and trying to wake up. That resonates with me. And another thing you were talking about is how we don't know. And one of my favorite terms out of the Way of Mastery, I think it was, when Jeshua says, we're all divinely ignorant. And it's so easy to accept the responsibility when I realize I'm really ignorant. I mean, yeah, I got an ego here, but that's not me. And I don't know. Again, just the way you flow is really a delight to listen to.
Oh, thank you. Well, again, I can't take credit. If it was Laina talking, it would have been a shit show. It's actually try to be taking credit and making things convoluted. But, you know, what you said is so key that we understand. Just sitting in ignorance and accepting, you know what, I don't know much. It's very difficult because the ego is being right was associated with rewards and safety. When we were wrong, you and I, kind of the same generation, we got sent to the principal's office. I got paddled. I used to have there was a wooden paddle in the school at the principal's office. And so being wrong is associated with pain and embarrassment, shamed in front of the classroom, fired from a job because you were wrong, or losing a relationship because you did something wrong. The ego knows that by keeping us avoiding being wrong, it maintains its need to be right, and it's survival. That's all that it is. It's survival. So every single time I work with somebody individually and we go to the place where that fear of being wrong comes up, we have to go to that inner child, that experience, that punishment, and recognize you weren't punished because you did something wrong. You didn't know what you didn't know. You didn't have loving teachers or parents or guides or bosses who helped you take what you didn't know and allowed you to expand on it. It became black and white, right, wrong, good, bad, punishment, reward. And we have to train our minds to that. It's not just right and wrong. It's an infinite universe with infinite possibilities. And we've got to give ourselves permission to move into that place of trying another way, just trying something else. Because when we give ourselves permission to let things be another way, we move out of that egoic righteousness and become more open-minded. And then we're practicing what the Course in Miracles teaches in the Manual for Teachers, the characteristics of one who has aligned with God's truth. We become open-minded, we become gentle, we become tolerant, because we can't possibly know everything. We're only one point of awareness. 8 billion people, we would have to take the knowledge of 8 billion people to have a clearer picture of all that is. So my one point, tiny little fraction of 8 billion, we should be humble enough to say, you know what, I don't know it all. And yes, I'm ignorant of the truth. And Way of Mastery, what a beautiful teaching. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, Christo.
I loved also, Mike mentioned about being divinely ignorant. Thanks, Mike, for that reminder too. To think that we are, when we're ignorant, we can still be divine. That's such a gift, Can you hear me?
Unknown caller.
Oh, you've got somebody's phone's.
Oh.
Go.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I mean, that's quite a good reminder to still know that you're a divine being, you know. So that's amazing. And also, you know, when you mentioned that when Jesus was blessed in the River Jordan, you know, when he got, what do you call it? He got washed with the water, and he suddenly became aware of more of who he was, you know, of course, and that's what you're doing here, you know. So thank you for that. You're reminding us more about the things, some of which we know already, but it's such great reminders to be reminded of the wonderful things that you're sharing. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's good to have you back from your travels and here with us. Well, you know, the ego has created a world that is designed to distract us, to help us forget who we are. And all of those distractions are so ingrained in us that we need approval from others, that we need to, you know, make money and save money and look for the right person to keep me safe. And so we have learned to be distracted from that inner source of power, and we gave it away, which is why I believe that I'm being called to focus on lesson 76, because if we understand that what happens when we're under no laws but God's, we can see that the whole political system is nothing but an egoic shit show. And it is nothing but the ego attempting to control and to rule over us, but to rule over those who have given their power away, consciously or unconsciously. And much of humanity is unconsciously giving their power away. But when you become conscious that you can't give your power away, you are the source of power, then you can be in this world but not of it, because you're playing the game. We all have an opportunity to play the game and move the game into a higher frequency game, an elevated game of love and compassion and collaboration and co-creation and transparency. And that is the happy dream. But we must understand the components of a happy dream, which doesn't have ego. There's no ego in the happy dream. There's a tiny amount of ego, but it's an ego that is not ruling over you, because you have become the authority over it. And it just is enough ego to let you believe that you have a separate body, but then you appreciate the body as the vessel that it is to express God's love. Now everybody is operating in recognition that we're all here just to play the game. How can we do this so that it is fun and joyful for everybody? And it can be done, but we all have to treat each other, as our Constitution stated, as equals. Nobody can have more power over another. We all have to participate in the governance for the sake of just, you know, creating a place that is, you know, having some rules for the game, human game, but not that are more powerful or override God's rules, God's laws. And nobody can be ahead of anybody else. Nobody can be, you know, president is a representative. It is not an authority. So this is exciting time. So come and we'll go over those laws, and then we'll see why the politics are exactly as they need to be right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other thoughts or comments just about today's? And I call them transmissions because it's just transmitted through me. No, well, thank you all so much for taking the time. And the other episodes are on my YouTube channel. If you appreciated this, enjoyed it, got something out of it, feel free to share it with others, because ego doesn't like for us to share truths, because it's like, well, I don't want people to think I'm crazy. I'm listening to this woman talking, and she said all kinds of crazy things. But if you override the ego's desire to suppress truth, then you become part of what the Course says right here. The salvation of the world depends on me. We have to be courageous enough to share truth. So that's it. Love you all. See you next week. Same time, same channel, same bat channel. See you all later. Mike, it was so good to see you. I'm so happy to see you. Bye-bye.